Hey, what's going on, everyone? Happy Monday, and welcome to Boilon's Lord of the Rings Heroes of Middle-earth channel. We have another video here for you today. I hope that you all had a very great weekend and Mother's Day. So for those of you who did something, then like myself, which is why there wasn't a video really too much over the weekend, because I was just taking a little bit of a breather for family reasons and whatnot. But today we're here to do part 2 of the video that I meant to get out before, which was the Shadow stat video. So we're going to be doing a deep dive on all of the Shadow characters. I'm going to give you my impression of them so far. I'm going to be telling you the ones that I'm using so far, ones that I'm maybe not so much using, and that kind of stuff here today. So if you're ready to go, everybody, then let's boil this down. And right off the bat, we're just going to start here on the roster page really quickly before we deep dive into the stats themselves. So I want to talk about the Shadow characters that I'm using, particularly in the campaign, but also ones that you want to kind of take a look out for currently in the arena. Now, we're going to be doing a separate video. My next video is going to be all about arena and kind of showcasing the different arena teams I fought. So I'm basically kind of like hovering around Gold 1 and Mithril 2, kind of in that range there for arena. So I'm pretty high up there. I'm like top 150 or so in the arena, at least on Shard 1. I know there's a handful of shards nowadays. But, I want to kind of take a look at some of the teams that I'm going up against and what kind of merits some of these characters have. So right off the bat, though, the Haradrim, and that's why I have him starred, Yeftu, because I do farm him daily for shards. There is a rumor out there that the Haradrim may be used for a future legendary. I believe that it was data mined that the Witch King may use the Haradrim, so I'm just doing this as a precaution. I'm not really leveling them right now. There is like 1 or 2 people in my guild that is actually using them, but and they're quite strong. But they had an early Robel unlock who isn't farmable until much later on. But we do got to talk about Gaz Ironhide, because the Ironhide Troll, as I like to call him, one of the best characters in the game. His stats are pretty good, but he's got like 2 full AoEs on both his skills, which makes him really, really strong. He's actually going to be one of my first contenders for Gear Tier 7, which is what I'm starting to do right now, and I put a lot of his ability upgrades in there as well. I think we'll have to do a separate video as well on ability upgrade priorities, because I'm not sure if we're going to really have time to talk about that today. But otherwise, in my Shadow campaign group, I'm using a lot of the Isengard orcs still. So I'm using Mauher, Dunhar as the healer, because he's the only healer really for the Isengard, and there's not a lot of early available free-to-play Shadow healers, so that's kind of it there. And Ugluk, of course. So that makes 4 characters. Sorry, and Wubei. Yes, I've been using Wubei for quite a long time as an additional character alongside Ironhide Troll. A lot of the reasons is because I love his slow. He also is a Haradrim character, so if that rumor proves to be true, then I'll have his star rank higher and his gear tier higher already, so that's good to go. Yeah, he does do an AoE attack that inflicts slow, and I like this. And even though we're here to talk about the stats, I do want to say that the kit is important. If they have a very good kit and very good stats, then obviously that means they're going to be a very good character. If they have poor stats but a good kit, they could still be a good character, but they have more of a mountain to climb, and so it's less apparent. So I want to talk about, something, for example, like Nuraz. I'm seeing a lot of people try to use him, but his stats are pretty garbage. Now, I know that his main sort of thing is that he summons the extra troll Stonebreaker, which is good, but it's on a cooldown of 10. That's not so much the problem, because you're just getting him out to begin with. But it's because that's kind of all he does. He does do other things, and he does do like some minor support stuff, but I just don't feel it's really worth it overall. And he's super damn squishy. I've fought against this guy in the arena, and it's actually not as impressive as you might think. And so more broadly, though, there's a lot of Shadow characters that kind of take a long time to unlock. And what's really disappointing about the Great Goblin, who used to be incredibly arena meta in the pre-release, is that a lot of the rest of the goblins are much later in the campaign, which really devalues them. And so by the time you get them, it's not really worth building. There is actually, in fact, a lot of Shadow characters that you could unlock kind of early, but most of them are broken synergy and characters that you don't want to really consider that much. And it's crazy how different it is from the pre-release, because a lot of the goblins were very easily accessible and were considered, early Shadow campaign characters. But no, they made it so that you get the Isengard orcs very easily on. And I would skip, personally, Morzha. His kit's it's not super great either for Arena or for Shadow Campaign, and so I would just ignore him there. So yeah, my personal campaign usage anyways, Ironhide, I called them the Isengard 3, and then I use Wu Beite. But, you know, hey, let me know in the comments down below what you use at least for the Shadow Campaign. Maybe it's a little bit different than what I do. So let's jump into the stats. Now, I've kind of rearranged this slightly different than what I did for the light side. So I have only mentioned speed. Actually, this should be in green. I've only mentioned speed on certain characters where they're really good. Otherwise, I've kind of given them shades, or I put text in the speed, because a lot of the speed ends up bulking from 140. The average is like 140, 150 kind of range. If it's lower than that, it's pretty bad. If it's higher than that, it's really good, and I've kind of made mention of those. For focus and resistance, also, there's a lot of clumping. There's not a ton of difference between the different characters, so I've used color shades as well. So green is good, orange or yellow is average, and red is bad. That's basically how I've kind of done that now. But, you know, the main focus really is health, damage, and armor, aside from a little bit of speed on some characters, which we'll point out. So let's start with the Isengard team, and we have Ugluk here, and he is really, really good. His stats, pretty solid, I would say. You know, he's got a top 5 health. He's number 5 in the health category. Number 3 in armor, and his damage is still pretty respectable in the top 20. He's also quite fast. He's the 13th fastest character in the game. So, Ugluk, a very strong character. He's also a very strong standalone character that you'll often see in the arena. You've probably seen him a lot, even outside of the Isengard team, because of his, sorry, not that, that's his basic, his special move, which applies blind. This is very potent when you're attacking certain characters like Ironhide Troll, or Strider, or other ways that you can block AoE attacks by inflicting blind on them, and he does tank very well. So, if you're going to use one shadow character that's, you know, not Ironhide Troll, then it will be Ugluk, because he is probably the next best character for Arena. Mauher, now he's kind of I wouldn't say he's a glass cannon, because he's a very strong DPS damage character, but, you know, he does have some pretty respectable stats here. He's got a top 10 health, top 5 damage stat. His armor's not terrible, it's pretty average, but it could be a lot worse. And the only problem is his speed is a little bit on the lower end, so he is, you know, a bit below average on the speed. But nonetheless, he does what he needs to do. And then we have Dunhar, Morzha, and Azhag. I will talk about Dunhar specifically a little bit here. As a healer, this is pretty typical of what you would expect from stats. A lot of the support characters do end up having this around there. Some of them have a little bit higher health, but that's not bad, because healers do require high hit points to get more healing out, because it's based on their hit points where they give out. So, you know, Dunhar's not doing bad. Morzha, though, pretty garbage stats in my opinion. His armor's not bad. It's actually top 15 in the game, but other than that, not super amazing. Azhag, also not really that good here, you can see. He does it where, if you're able to get him unlocked, he's I don't even have him yet, but his damage stat is very high, and the rest of his stats are pretty average. He does put out a lot of good damage, and I would like to replace Wu Beite probably with Azhag if I can get him unlocked, but other than that, I would probably just not worry about it, and these are the main characters that you want to worry about. Ironhide Troll, one of the main characters that we just talked about. He is number 4 in health, top 10 in damage, and top 15 in armor. Rest of his stats are pretty bad, but he's there to really push that out. He's got 2 AoEs. His ultimate's on actually a low cooldown of 4, so you can get that more than once per arena match, and it's very helpful in campaigns as well, and you'll definitely get more than one in campaign modes. The rest of the Mordor team, though, we have Shagrat. He's probably the next one that's worth mentioning. Some of these minion characters, I call them minions because in the pre-release they were minions, are not necessarily worth mentioning. If they have a lot of red, I'm probably going to skip over them. But Shagrat is top 15 in health, top 10 in damage, top 20 in armor. I think we'll have to wait until my arena video because I did come up against a Shagrat, and I think it really depends on the context of the team overall. I just think that some characters, if you're not spending, it's very hard to unlock some of these characters early on, and there's not enough gear to go around for everyone. So you really need to pick a focus. And so the free-to-play focus really is Isengard 3 with Ironhide Troll and maybe an optional 5th of your choice at that point. The other Mordor characters, they're not bad. One thing I do want to point out is Rachma. He is the old Mordor engineer, and he does have like multiple AoEs in his kit. And so given that his damage is a top 15 stat, that means that he's actually going to do pretty good damage. But his health is still a bit on the squishier side, and it could be a lot worse. But yeah, you can probably focus target him down pretty easily. His armor is kind of average, his speed's average. So, but he is someone to look out for. The rest of them, Not so much. Uzan is like Mordor Taskmaster in the pre-release. Not very good in my opinion. He does have some healing, but it's not a good kit. And Grimlars is the damage character with the daggers, but he has some pretty poor stats for a damage character compared to both Mauher and Azhak. It's not something that I'm super impressed with. The Dunland team, we're just... not super great because they're obviously a team of 3. There's not a lot of synergy there, and the rest of them are actually pretty late unlocks. Edric, though, you can get him unlocked in Guild Chapter 1, and some people do use him for a little bit, until you get a better 5th character, and I did, actually, because if you saw on my roster, I actually did have Edric built up a little bit anyways. He's like level 35, so he was a means to an end. So if you need to do that, it's not too bad because his stats actually show that he is fairly decent. Top 12 in health. Top 25 in damage, but top 10 in armor. He has a bit of a tank, but he has some pretty good buffs along the way. The Haradrim. I really like these characters, and I think that they're going to be a very meta team. Because the Haradrim Sage, who we don't have yet in the game, his passive allows all of the other Haradrim passives to be shared with each other. It's pretty nuts, and actually their stats are pretty respectable in the health, damage, and armor category. You can see them here. Wubuite is the tank for the team. Actually, Robel also does some tanking, I think, too. They all have some pretty good stats, actually, especially in the armor category, but Yeftu has some pretty high damage. His percentages in his attacks are very high. I do know someone who has geared him up and actually upgraded him, but he does have some really high percentages in his attacks that he gets per upgrade. 40%, even though it's only single target, is still a lot. 40%, 40%, 50%, some huge numbers. So I think that this team has potential if you want to actually build them up, but I haven't had first-hand experience with using them myself. Some of the other characters, we have the Misty Mountain here to talk about, and it's just not as meta as it was before. Great Goblin, you'll get him unlocked through the login calendar. But aside from that, a lot of the other Goblin characters are just such late farms, and you kind of need the whole team of 5 Great Goblin and 4 Goblins to really make it work, and I'm just not a big fan personally. Chef Kraska, I believe his name was Goblin Chef in the pre-release. He was he was like one of the first characters that you would unlock in the Shadow campaign, and now he's like at the end. He's like the last character that you unlock. He's like way down the line, because he's a healer for he used to be the main Shadow healer for the team, and now it's Dunhar from the Isengard Orcs, but it used to be this guy. And you can see that the Goblins have some pretty poor stats on health. If you remember what I talked about with the Hobbits, it's pretty much the same just on the Shadow side. Their speed is very high, their health is very low, and so they're kind of using their speed to their advantage. In this instance, though, they don't have the evades and nimble like a lot of the Hobbits do. So take it for what it's worth. And I do want to focus a little bit on the rest of the Misty Mountain, which is the Misty Mountain Orcs. Bolg, Tordok, and Nuraz specifically, and a little bit on Gruhur the Brute. Now, Gruhur the Brute is the other troll in the game, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this. We're going to kind of focus on Bolg first. Bolg is not really free-to-play accessible. If you want to buy an offer for Bolg, I think he's going to be very strong. I do have some arena footage coming soon of going up against these teams with Bolg and Tordok and Gruhur the Brute, I believe, as well in that team. He has some really good stats. Top 10 in health, top 5 in damage. He is a damage character. You may mostly tank with Tordok because he tanks there, in top 20 armor, which isn't terrible for a damage character. Tordok, though, his health could be a little bit better, but it's still not terrible. But he's number 1 in armor. He's the tankiest guy in the game. So, again, if you're able to unlock them, but otherwise it's pretty late, and Bolg is a very slow farm. So, I have been using my tokens, my challenge tokens on Bolg, and I'm sitting here at, what am I at? 30 out of 45. It's very slow. Tordak, nowhere even. 5 out of Tordok, sorry, not Tordak. 5 out of 45. Where do you find him? It's pretty late in the game. Hard Shadows 5-1, I'm not even there yet. So it is a very, if you don't buy from the pack that shows up with him, it's a very late farm. And so as much as I like this guy, I would totally use these guys over some of the Isengard for the campaign and whatnot, but it's not feasible early on unless you spend. Otherwise, there's no option. Nuraz, I talked a little bit about him. He does summon a troll, which is great, but the rest of his stats are hot garbage. I don't really like his kit beyond the summoning of the troll. And sometimes when you're playing the campaign, you can't actually summon things because you get those NPCs on the side. That goes for Eomer as well. That there runs into issues with both Eomer and with Nuraz, and frankly anyone else that summons. I don't know if I missed someone. Great Goblin as well would do that. So that's a bit of an issue there. And Gruhur the Brute. Now his stats are pretty good. Health number 3, Damage number 1. Armor is mediocre, but he has some of the slowest speed, which you would expect as a troll. Ironhide's not that great anyways, not at this low, but I think Gruher the Brute is the slowest character in the game, I'm pretty sure. But the stats are not too bad, although the problem is, once again, can't really farm him. So, really not a free-to-play accessible character. Actually, in fact, you can't. So, you're limited to the offer packs that may or may not pop up for him. And so, yeah, I've seen some. We'll take a look about his kit. He has a really nice AoE on his, I think it's his special. Is it Earthshaker? Or that's his basic. It would probably be, I don't know which one. This, I don't use them, so I'm pretty sure there's AoE, so there's supposed to be AoE. Attack all enemies, Earthshaker, for this. It also inflicts defense down or expose, depending on which game you're from. Exposes defense down for Marvel Strike Force. So a really good kit mechanic here. He's a strong character, but again, a lot of these are not free-to-play accessible characters, and so I can't really personally recommend them because my channel is more based on the free-to-play sort of pathway forward. So again, some of the best characters that you're going to want to work on early on are going to be the ones that I mentioned early on, but I wanted to kind of just break this down for you. I'm going to be sharing this in my Discord channel as well. There's a resource channel for all of this stuff that I post after the video goes live, if you want to check this out on your own time, because it's very useful to know sort of how strong a character is. And if you ever go up against them in arena, then you get to know how squishy they are and how easily you can kill them too if they use any of these other characters. But yes, focus on your Isengard 3, focus on your Ironhide Troll for just now, and then later down the road when there's more resources available, maybe we can spread out a little bit more and try some of these combinations. But otherwise, that's the end of this video, everyone, and until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.